Welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Kerry Stevenson. Today we're talking all about 3D printing with a company by the name of AML3D. Joining me today is the founder of AML3D, founder and managing director, Andy Sales. Andy, thanks so much for joining us here on Small Caps today.
Yeah, thanks very much, Kerry, for the opportunity. Good to be chatting.
Well, 3D printing is something that some people know a lot about and others don't know very much about at all. So before we go into the detail of AML, because I'm going to call it AML from now on, let's talk about who you are, what you're doing, and then we'll dig into why this is a really good time for investors to know what you're up to.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Look, AML3D is based on medium to large scale additive manufacturing, or 3D printing as we like to refer to. We print all sorts of materials from aluminiums, bronzes, through to ferrous materials, such as high strength structural steel sections, through to oil and gas type components, high nickel alloys, titanium. So we do the whole lot. And the way we do that is we do it by layering bead by bead. We use a wire feedstock, which is melted to form that bead, and we control that bead in a very special way. So in terms of what we do in as far as our revenue streams go, is that we do contract manufacturing. We make components for companies, and we also sell our equipment to companies who want to make those parts themselves. So that's a quick snapshot of what and who we might be.
Why, 3D printing, what's the history of 3D printing? And how did you get into it? Because when I introduced you, you're the founder and managing director. How did you get into 3D? What was it that you saw? Was there a gap in the market? And is AML one of the only ones that is doing some of these larger pieces, I guess, for the manufacturing sector?
I guess just on that, we're probably one of three globally that do it very well. There's a couple of companies up in the Northern Hemisphere, one in Northern Europe and the other one in North America. The one in North America was actually FAA approved by Boeing about 5 years ago. So when we were starting up, and it was around then that we got our accelerated commercialisation grant to fund our commercialisation of our process. I saw that as a great pathway. You know, it's a very similar process they were using. They were using wire feedstock to melt it, to form a bead. They were just doing it in a slightly different way to our now patented process. So, so there is only a couple of, 2 to 3 global players that are doing this seriously and to the level that we do it. The good thing for us, it might sound strange to say, but the good thing is that the process is getting more and more interest and common, and some of the big tier 1 and tier 2 potential customers are starting to look at the process very seriously in terms of an alternative metal manufacturing method.
Why is it? What's the plus side of using an AML 3D printing versus traditionally doing it? Is it better for the environment? Is it lighter? Is it quicker? What are the pros and cons?
Yeah, all of the above, really. I guess carbon emission wise, you know, we've got a very almost next to nothing footprint, carbon footprint. When you compare steel manufacturing through steel mills and forging, you know, there's something like 1.8 tonne of carbon emissions that come out from steel making, obviously, but because we use a very concise melting process, and it's melted with a very thin wire, bead on bead, as I say, then our carbon emissions are next to nothing, and our energy per hour that we use, kilowatts per hour, is is next to nothing as well. So it's very efficient in that form. So it's quite attractive for end users, in particular, that we can also have our units or our equipment, our large printers, sitting on remote sites down at, factories near the wharf, near shipbuilding, construction sites. So there's huge opportunity to actually put our process into where the source of the components are needed, rather than the traditional way of, say, ordering big blocks of metal and steel from these mills overseas typically. They then need to get shipped to Australia. They then need to be worked, machined, polished, and made into the final form that they need. And then they need to be shipped to the source of need.
And I would have thought sorry to interrupt you, Andy, I would have thought during COVID, this is a massive plus, especially here in Australia, because there is
it's huge.
That logistical supply chain has all been disrupted.
Yeah, I've got a great little story there as well. Part of my background is as a mechanical and welding engineer in the oil and gas and resources sector, a number of years ago. So I actually used to deal with some of the valve manufacturers up in Europe, typically northern Italy and especially in the UK. So we had an approach by a potential customer last year when COVID came along. Obviously, all those factories and valve making factories up in northern Italy had actually closed down. Unfortunately, well, I think we all know that Italy had quite a bad time and locked the country down literally last year with COVID. And that shut that industry down, and they actually had valves, valve bodies, big 1-ton valve bodies being manufactured up there. And that was an already 16-week lead time for them, so 4 months.
So could AML then step in and say, hey, we can do this for you quicker, cheaper?
Well, they actually approached us about it. So we got on board with doing a lot of the testing to obviously their requirements to then prove the mechanical properties, which was met very well. And by that time, unfortunately for us, the steel mills had opened back up over there. But we've been in constant talks with them about what they actually realised was that, we can actually... So come to someone like AML, and a 1-ton valve body piece is around about 2 weeks for us to print off or additively manufacture it to a near net shape. There's very minimal polishing and machining to be done on that, and to supply that within 3 to 4 weeks rather than a 16-week lead time. So that's just one example. That's occurring, and we're in discussions with various companies, not only in Australia but overseas as well. So it's quite an exciting time for us, especially with our patent just being granted now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that, Andy, because what is the patent for? Explain, because you've got a patent process. It's the process, as I understand it, but that would make you stand out because it's been granted. What is it?
So it's actually a patent for the process and the apparatus. So all encompassing equipment and the components that we use to enhance the process as well. They all work synergically through the robotic system that we've got in place and through a PLC, so that's programmable logic computer, which provides feedback from the layering method or the printing method. We get feedback from that through the PLC in a form that we can improve the process and look at that data, those numbers, and make it more efficient. We've got procedures built into that. We've also got a couple of devices that enhance heating and cooling So it's an all-encompassing process, which is covered by the patent, which look, I'm really ecstatic about. I'm really proud of not only, I guess, myself, but the team that we've had over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So just to let everyone know, you know, we've had that granted in Australia about a month and a half ago. It's also now been granted in New Zealand and in South Korea. Europe and the US obviously take a little bit longer, but we should get notice in the new year, sometime in the new year to mid next year.
But it's patent pending for those areas, so it's not like somebody can come over and rip
it's pending examination. So it's been lodged early last year. So early last year was our lodgement around the world.
Yep.
So we've covered off everywhere. It's just that the US Patent Office and the EU Patent Office are inundated, obviously. Lots of innovation going on around the world.
It's and it is very innovative, but you know, for shareholders out there, but also for those people that are listening who are investors, you've just secured a contract with Boeing. Now, Boeing, first of all, are a massive company, but they're also very particular. How did that come about?
Yeah, they are. Well, I guess what people might be surprised to learn is that we were actually engaged by them probably about 3.5 years ago. So they started reaching out. They had already validated and qualified one of our competitors up in North America, which I referred to before. And they took that company through FAA approval. And as all big companies like to do, they don't just like having one sole source supplier. So they reach out and look for others. So through our CDIC involvement here in Australia and our Oz industry involvement through getting AC grants and a couple of other business grants in the early days, Boeing agent here had reached out and just came across us in our early days. So I went to the US to meet them about 3 years ago, and that culminated in getting all sorts of paperwork done so that we could talk IP and that sort of thing. And it's really progressed from there. We had done some trials over the last couple of years, and that's now culminated in receiving this first initial purchase contract. That's for a component that they use for tooling and tool molds. So these units range from, and the one in particular that we're doing is around about 150 kgs in weight, and about 1 metre long, but they actually go up to about 30 metres long, believe it or not. And they use these tooling tables or tooling moulds for curing their composites, which is their composite structures, which are used then for the sheeting on airplane wings and fuselage, right, and that sort of thing. So it's a really exciting market, the tooling, the Invar tooling industry. It's quite large. I think it's worth about 70-odd billion a year. It's not only one aerospace company that uses them, obviously Airbus, Bombardier, all the big players out there. And there's many aerospace companies out there. So we're quite excited by that. And we've got a connection here with Boeing Australia too.
Once you've got into Boeing, then all the other aerospace people will be starting to say, well, what are AML doing? Why don't we start using them? First of all, the carbon emissions, or
that's right,
very few of them. That must put you ahead of the game with any other of these big manufacturers out there, I would have thought.
Oh, look, we think it does because there's an issue with some of the tooling design sometimes, and the procurement of that, the manufacturing of it. It takes a few months to design and manufacture those tooling arrangements. There's a lot of post work done in preparing that for delivery. But our process gives opportunity to cut that supply chain from the mill, basically. Our wire feedstock is very plentiful. We can get that within, significant amounts within a couple of weeks, even some of the rarer type of feedstock. So once we've got that material here, and we hold stock here with that particular material.
Here being based in Adelaide, isn't it? So you're in
Adelaide, yeah. We've established really good supply chains for our wire feedstock. So, but yeah, it gives us huge advantage. But what we're now going out to customers with is that it also gives them opportunity to purchase our systems and that they can manufacture those parts themselves. So, our revenue model is looking at both avenues, because there really is plenty of work out there, and plenty of companies are looking at these efficient, advanced manufacturing processes, which we fall under. So we're quite confident now, obviously, receiving this patent, or we're on the journey of receiving our patents in other countries, that will come to roll that out globally, and that's part of our distribution plan over the next sort of 12 to 18 months is rolling that out over throughout the globe.
Well, I don't want to finish up before I talk about Flinders University and I think it's BAE Systems. What's that collaboration? BAE, yeah. And what does that mean for, for shareholders going forward with the growth of the company?
Yeah, look, it's a really good foundation that we've set up with BAE in particular. Flinders are also there as a research partner. We've been talking again with BAE for a number of months now. In fact, it's probably a couple of years now on the process itself. They understand the process. They see it as one of the more advanced 3D printing processes available, but not only that, probably one of the most flexible in terms of we can build without an enclosed chamber, and we can build on site. We don't need to be in a factory or a controlled environment. So it's a very flexible process. So they see opportunity in that. We have done a few test parts with them last year. That's culminated in the arrangement that we just announced a couple of months ago it was a month ago. We had our open day on the 9th of July, and we announced that we would be putting an Alchemy module, printing module into BAE's precinct at the Tonsley Innovation Hub, which just happens to be next to Flinders University. So there's a nice three-way tie there. BAE are looking at how and what components could be built with the process, but also looking at training some of their operators, some of their staff. So they really have got this vision of this factory of the future for the upcoming frigate program. Naval Group, by the way, are looking very closely, because the submarines will go off soon after the frigate program starts. And it's really looking at where they can gain efficiencies in producing components that are normally long lead items from overseas. And we talk about this sovereign capability, and BAE and Flinders are really onto that for this Factory of the Future program that they've got for these frigates.
We spoke, Andy, about the fact that you are doing large manufacturing components. In the future, will AML also be manufacturing, widgets and gadgets, like some of the smaller things? Because you mentioned before that this particular component was 150 kilos. What about those little lightweight things that, volume-wise, you can just spin them out? And I'm assuming that with your wire feed technology, that this can be a lot more cost effective.
Oh yeah, so I guess the way to put that is probably the the more value or high cost material a certain metal alloy is, determines the size that we can go down to in terms of geometry. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a titanium aerospace grade alloy. It's very beneficial for us to do parts that are, say, 2 or 3 kilograms, right up to obviously the high kilos and the tons. If we talk about common, say, structural steels or common aluminiums, let's say, the item where it becomes cost effective for the customer is much larger. So a bit more than my arm span. So it really depends on how the cost of the material. But I guess to answer your former question, yes, we are really focused on repeatable contract manufacturing for customers, especially in that high-end metals area, the titanium in particular, the high nickel alloy steels. I think most of our investors will know about our Lightforce arrangement. That's progressing very well. It's taken a lot longer than what we thought, because Lightforce have got BD to do on their components, but in terms of actually being a success, in terms of the material strength and the shape that we can produce for that, that's been really good. We're looking at next phase of that really soon. So hopefully something will come out. But we've also got some really exciting developments internally that we've been focusing on as well, which is not only in the equipment capability, but it's also in the materials capability as well. So there's some really, really cool stuff coming out soon.
Yeah, well, it's a whole new world, but we've got an investor audience here. They're keen to know why they should invest in AML right now. Now, obviously, you're kicking goals. You've got the patent awarded for Australia, New Zealand, and South Korea. It's pending for other parts of the world. Tell us why now is a good time for investors to be putting their hard-earned cash into AML3D.
Oh, look, I think it's a fantastic time at the moment. You know, what we're rolling out over the next year and 2 years with that vision of, long-term sustainability, that's returns for the company means returns for investors as well. So, the patent is a key part of that in now rolling out our distribution globally. So we're very focused on that over the next 12 to 24 months. So we will be in all parts of the world. Our groundbreaking material strength research that we've done in the background, there's some exciting stuff coming out in terms of aluminium strength, which is going to be a bit of a game changer. So there's some developments there. And look, we just think that we're in the right state at the moment. We've got the frigate program coming up over the next few years. We're well entrenched with BAE. We've got a fantastic opportunity with Boeing, and we're looking forward to seeing how that plays out over the next few months and hopefully years. Hopefully that's a catalyst to get us into North America and give us some focus there. There is real opportunity up there. So we're onto it from that perspective. So I guess that's the reason for taking AML seriously. We really have got some exciting things to come.
Well, kicking goals in what I call a new green technology environment, certainly less carbon emissions is only something good for all of these major manufacturers out there. And you've got the solution to what was becoming a bit of an issue. So I congratulate you, Andy. You're the founder, you're the managing director. Well done. And for those out there that, once again, let me just let you know, the ASX code is AL3. Check them out, doing big things in the 3D printing world. Andy Sales, thanks so much for joining me on Small Caps today.
Thanks very much, Kerry.